and this guy proceeded to sue the dealership. Took us to court. Long story short, the guy got a check for like $50,000 or $60,000.
Hey everyone, on today's episode, we're going to be talking with a former sales manager of Mercedes-Benz, here to discuss the do's and don'ts. My name is Mark, and this is Jaime, both of AutoCompanion. So let's get into it. Okay, let's start off with the first question. Is Carfax really that important if you're shopping for a vehicle?
Yes and no. If you find out that the damage was minor, I don't think it makes a difference on you buying that car or not, because when you're ready to sell that car, you can share that same information to the next buyer. Look, it was just the front bumper was painted. Nothing else was damaged to the vehicle. No parts were replaced. Nobody went to the hospital, whatever the case may be, you know? So I don't think it's a deal breaker. It will help you though negotiate that vehicle even farther if he shows on the Carfax. So
the next question, and this is a question that I'm kind of familiar with myself because I was involved in a situation like this, is what do you recommend if you have a small repair or ding on your vehicle?
So if you have a small ding on your vehicle and you don't want to affect the Carfax, the value of the car, I always recommend just pay out of pocket, just have a body shop, fix it. Because if you go through your insurance, you're going to get that Carfax, altered, and that's going to affect the value of the car in the future. So just as long as it's below the, $500 or $1,000, I always recommend just pay out of pocket to avoid any issues in the future.
Yeah, and I again, as I mentioned, I'm quite familiar with this myself. I got into a small fender bender while trying to merge lanes, and another car sideswiped my vehicle, and it was a BMW Z4 3.0 SI. So it's kind of a high-priced vehicle, and unfortunately, I was unaware at the time that I shouldn't call the police because it was a very minor fender bender. It was something that could have just been buffed out. And when I called the police, they came onto the scene, they wrote a report, and ultimately that went on the Carfax, which resulted in a huge diminished value on my car. So basically, if I wanted to resell the vehicle or trade it in, I would have lost around $3,000, $4,000. And people would have kept on lowballing me as a result of that bad Carfax, when in reality, all I had to do was just, go back home, buff it out. There was no dents or, major paint scratches. So that was a big mistake I made. And that was a big lesson that I learned when it comes to minor scratches or, small things that could be basically buffed out. You should do that instead of going through your insurance or, getting officers involved. The next question is, how much negotiating power does a consumer have with a tainted Carfax?
It really depends. What I recommend is, if the car that you're trying to negotiate has a bad Carfax, try to find out exactly what happened there. Some dealerships do have the paperwork or the invoices of whatever was done to that vehicle during the accident. So if the damage was minor, it was just a fender bender, they just painted the front bumper or just a quarter panel, just whatever, then I think you have a couple $1,000s. But know that the dealership is accounting for these bad Carfax when they're pricing their vehicle as well. So generally, you have some leverage there, but not all the time. Now, if the damage is severe, if you know that the damage is $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, then you definitely have more value or more options to negotiate that vehicle even farther. But know that dealerships generally know exactly what happened to that car and will price the vehicle accordingly.
I think one question that I've encountered a lot on different forums is, if I have two almost identical vehicles and one has a tainted Carfax and the other one does not, what would be the recommendation?
Well, generally the one with the Carfax hopefully should have a lower price than the one that doesn't. And if they don't have different prices or the prices are very similar, just find out exactly what happened with that specific car. And then you can use the other car as leverage to negotiate even further. Like you can tell the dealership, hey, this car has a bad Carfax, the value of the car is less. So I want you to give me this much off on the vehicle for me to make a deal. The dealership's gonna say, no, this is the value of the car. Yes, but look, I found this other car, it's exactly the same it's exactly the same vehicle, very similar miles. Why wouldn't I just buy that car instead of this one with a bad Carfax? So it allows you to hopefully drop a couple $1,000s on the
So how do I guess the question I have is, like, how do dealerships come up with diminished value? So let's say that those two identical cars, the dealership is obviously going to price the one with a tainted Carfax slightly lower, but how do they come up with that dollar amount?
Well, there's different auctions around the country that dictate the value of your car based on what's moving around the auction. So that will give you an idea of what the value of the car is, what they call MMR. That will give you an idea of where most of that specific vehicle should be priced around. So generally, those are vehicles with no with good Carfax records, right? But if a car has a bad Carfax, they generally drop $1,000 or $2,000 depending on the damage that was done to the vehicle.
Okay. Has there been a time where a customers came in with a vehicle and they were looking to trade in that vehicle and purchase a vehicle from your dealership? Have you denied them a trade-in for that?
Yeah, it's happened a couple of times. One is if the car was total before, if it was a total loss at one point and it shows on the Carfax, we don't want that car generally, unless of course if you lowball the crap out of the offer and you get a very, very low price that you can make some money on, sure, we'll take it. But generally we will say no to that. And also if it's very special cars like, I don't know, Ferrari, Lamborghini, whatever the case may be that we're not very familiar with, sometimes we would deny those trades just because we don't know enough or we did not want to risk enough to put money on that car.
Yeah, and I know, for example, Porsche, which is, a high-end car, they don't certify nor do they trade in any vehicle that has had paint on, I think, either
3 panels. Yeah.
I guess another question from a consumer standpoint is, when do you recommend not to purchase a vehicle with a bad Carfax?
If you're unsure of what happened to the car, if you know that something happened to the vehicle that was meaningful, but you don't know exactly what, I would not jump into that car. It could be anything. And the second thing is always open the hood of the car and see if the paint around the engine, on the guts of the vehicle match the rest of the paint of the car. If it was something severe, I would run away from that car. If you're unsure, the dealership doesn't know, the dealership tells you, oh, I don't know, we have no idea, more than likely they're hiding something and you should run away from that car.
So can there be cases where it's, even if there's a ding on the Carfax, you actually don't know what the repairs are?
Yeah, because sometimes the dealership will trade in a car with a bad Carfax and the customer did not explain or did not have any proof of exactly what happened to that vehicle. So sometimes you don't know exactly what happened to the car. It happened.
So I guess one question that I've been looking forward to the most is, since you've been in the retail side at Mercedes-Benz, what are some of the horror stories that you've encountered that involve Carfax?
I have one multiple, but one that really stuck out. About 3-4 years ago, I don't remember the specific number, so don't quote me on this, but what happened is we traded in a vehicle. At the time, it had a clean Carfax. When we bought the vehicle from the customer, there was no issues with the Carfax. Car was for sale. 2 months later, we sold it, and at the time of sale, the dealership has to print the Carfax that same date of the sale. We printed it out, customer signed it, we signed it was clean, no issues with the Carfax. A couple months later, customer comes back to us and says, hey, look, this was on the Carfax, and you guys told me the Carfax was clean, but I just found out that there is an issue with my Carfax. Apparently, what happened is before the customer who traded that car to us had an accident, immediately right after the accident happened, they traded over to us because they knew the value of the car was going to drop. So before it hit the Carfax, they traded it over to us. It took a couple months, I guess, for things to settle and to finally appear on the Carfax. So when we sold it, it was still not on the Carfax. Now the customer, for some reason, wanted to sell the car, and when he pulled the Carfax, it finally appeared on there. So he thought that we purposely, hid that from him, that we were trying to, just pretty much scam the guy, which was not the case at all, because we were not aware either. And this guy proceeded to sue the dealership. Took us to court. Long story short, the guy got a check for like $50,000 or $60,000, and the car was worth about the same. Basically, got his car paid for.
So basically, the guy who traded in the car kind of got away scotch-free. So I guess that's a big issue. If you get into an accident and then you immediately sell your car, there's definitely going to be a lag between the Carfax updating. Mm-hmm. So is there any safeguards in that, or?
Look, you're just trying to scam the next person. I would never recommend you do that. I mean, if it happens to you, I would personally never do that. I would feel terrible.
If it's private to private, then I'm guessing the person that bought the car could go back to the previous owner and actually sue them. I guess it would be a civil matter in that case.
It would be a civil matter. I mean, who knows? Nobody wants to get into that.
Based on that response, I think a good follow-up question would be, even if there's a good Carfax, is there anything that you recommend consumers to do?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even if the Carfax is clean, you never know if the person who had an accident just paid cash and the damage does not show on the Carfax. So I always recommend check the panels. If you look at the different panels with the sunlight reflecting on it, you can see if the panel was painted or not. You can tell different shades of colors. That's number one. Also, look at the angles of the panels. Once again, you can sometimes tell if, like, one side of the hood, for example, there is a small gap that does not match the right side of the hood. then you know there was something there, and when they fixed it, it was not fixed properly. And the third thing, open the hood, and you're gonna see if the paint inside around the engine matches the paint on the outside of the car, because from factory, it's gonna be all exactly the same paint. If you see different shades of paint, that means that the car was painted, completely, or something was done to the vehicle. So always check your car thoroughly before you buy it, even on a clean Carfax.
Yeah, I think one of the things I do is I always use a paint meter and go around to make sure that there's no discrepancies as well.
On high-end cars, yeah, but usually on a $40,000-$50,000 car, most dealerships don't use paint meters on those. But on a Porsche, for example, our Porsche store all the time, every single time they appraise a car, you're always checking every single panel for sure.
And those things will definitely devalue a lot if there's any even minor damage.
Yeah.
That's all for this episode. Hope everyone enjoyed it. If there's any questions that you have, leave them in the comment section below. Also, share us your stories, because the more information you provide, the more value it serves to the community. See you in the next video.